UFC 273, Draftkings has released the salary so we can take our first look. You can call me Kunith. Let's make some money this week. Sorry for not getting you this video sooner. Unfortunately, your boy got COVID. And for the first 1-2 days, it was really tough. And I could not bring myself to record those days. I just felt terrible. But days 3, 4, 5, championship rounds, championship days, we took over. This type of sickness has been around for what, 2-3 years? My immune system's been going for 25 years. So experience is definitely on my side. So as soon as I started feeling better, I took COVID's back, sunk the hooks in, got my rear naked in there, and now I'm feeling good and I'm ready to give you the best picks of the week because I know that unfortunately you've had to watch some other content out there. I've seen it too, and but this is the first look, so we start at the top of the slate, work our way down, and this week we have Alexander Volkanovski as the highest priced fighter at 9,500. He's our main event favorite this week. He's fighting the Korean Zombie, and Volkanovski should win this fight. And although I think he should win, I do think that it's a little bit closer than the line is indicating. Right now, he is a -800 favorite, which is crazy. That for that price, you expect him to go out there, knock out Zombie, no problem. But he's not really a big power puncher, and he may actually struggle when this fight is fought at distance. We know Zombie has decent power. He's fighting out of one of the best, hottest camps in the game right now at Fight Ready, and this is a huge opportunity for him. So I do think that he's going to bring the fight to Volkanovski, and I think that we are going to have a competitive match on our hands. But ultimately, from the Volkanovski side, the heavy leg kicks and the takedowns are going to be what wins him this fight, in my opinion. Personally, I'm not a big Volkanovski guy. I'm just not. But I do respect what the man has done. And right now he sits at 23-1, but if he didn't lose his 4th fight ever and he was a shiny, perfect 24-0, especially holding 2 title fight wins over Max Holloway, we'd be calling him the GOAT. But realistically, that 2nd fight with Max Holloway, I mean, come on. I haven't seen a robbery like that since the opening scene of The Dark Knight. But regardless, he is the king at 145 pounds, and I do think that he's going to defend his title this weekend. Personally, I'm not going to be playing him at this price on DraftKings, nor am I going to be betting him straight at these odds. He's just not worth putting your money into at -800. There are so many other spots that you can get to. You don't need to get to Volkanovski, and at 9,500 with the likes of Chimaev, Petr Yan has 5 rounds to work. Ian Garry's got a favorable matchup. There are a lot of good matchups with high finishing upside, high scoring potential. I don't expect myself to get here, despite that being a 5-round fight, and that also may help me get a little bit different. But the pick for this fight is Alexander Volkanovski, and I'm going to say by decision. Next at 9,400, we have the most intriguing fighter on the roster, the one that we really want to see. Khamzat Chimaev is fighting Gilbert Burns this week, and I'll tell you right now, the Wolf gonna eat him up. I expect Chimaev to stay on schedule. I expect him to pick up a finish in this spot. He's going to have some physical advantages, especially at this weight class. He's probably going to have that over most people, if not everybody that he fights. He's going to have a 4-inch height advantage, 4-inch reach advantage, and I actually expect him to win a lot of the striking exchanges as well, and ultimately find the knockout in this fight. I know we have seen Chimaev shoot and secure takedowns in the first few seconds of most of his fights, but shooting against somebody like Gilbert Burns is extremely risky. Now, most of the time it's just smash like you see here, but at the same time, he needs to be careful because Jairzinho is a good grappler. He could catch him in a guillotine. He can catch him with some kind of anaconda choke, some kind of darce. He needs to be very mindful of his neck when he's shooting for these takedowns because he's not Li Jingliang. He can actually grapple. And I think Chimaev is aware of the risk that's coming back his way from a grappling standpoint as well, and I think he's going to take his time and look for the strikes more so than just shooting for a takedown in the first few seconds. And not for nothing, Gilbert Burns is a bit chinny. In recent years, he hasn't really fought power punchers, but he was knocked down by a jab from Kamaru Usman, and he was knocked out a few years ago by Dan Hooker. Now, does getting knocked out twice in your career make you chinny? Not necessarily, but I really didn't like how Burns responded to getting hit when he took on Usman, and I think that Khamzat is going to do some serious damage when this fight is fought at boxing range. And obviously, we could point to Chimaev's fight against Gerald Meerschaert, where he hit him with a perfect straight right hand and knocked him out before he even hit the ground. You can also look at his ridiculous uppercut knockout on the regional scene as more evidence of his punching power. And the last thing that I'll say about this fight, because it's impressive, is the hype is real. Chimaev is currently a -600 favorite at the time of me recording this, when Kamaru Usman fought Gilbert Burns. Usman was only a -200 favorite. So Vegas is showing respect. I'm sure there's a lot of casual money coming in as well, but it's for good reason. I'm not picking anybody to beat Khamzat Chimaev until I see a reason not to. So the pick for me is Khamzat Chimaev inside the distance. At 9,400, you would think, oh, well, I don't know if I want to get there. Maybe Burns extends him to the second round. But when you look at Khamzat's normal score, it's 122 points. That's what he's averaging. And that's not just from a small sample size. It's not like he came in, got one quick knockout, and that's it. 4 dominant performances where he's on the optimal lineup each and every time. So pay attention. Pay attention. Make sure that you're not spending that extra salary on Volkanovski because, oh, he has 5 rounds to work in a better matchup. He's probably going to score more. I don't know about that, man. This guy is a different animal. Next at 9,300, Petr Yan is a must play against Aljamain Sterling this week. He's going to win. He's going to score over 100 points, and you really just need to look at the first fight between these two, and that'll tell you everything that you need to know. Sterling was having some success in the first round, but the differences in skill and strength were very, very apparent the longer the fight went on. When Sterling wanted to clinch, he'd get thrown down. When Sterling wanted to strike, he'd get countered hard. And quickly going back to the whole clinch thing, Yan Sambo is absurd. He's got phenomenal balance, and he can find trips and throws from really any position. From a Draftkings perspective, he's a must-play for those reasons, and he has 5 rounds to work. And he may do what he did in the first fight. No, not the illegal knee. I'm talking about getting takedowns and not even following Sterling to the ground. Literally just throwing him down, racking up 5 points for you on Draftkings, letting him get back up so he could do it all over again. In only 4 rounds, he took Sterling down 7 times, and I expect him to rag him just like that again this week. For Sterling, his path to victory is to grapple, but if he's being out-grappled, what does he have? We may even see Sterling slow down a little bit as the fight goes on, and we know that Yan is one of these fighters who gets stronger the longer the fight goes on, so he may be able to close this out maybe in the 4th round, maybe the 5th round. For the pick for me for this fight is Petr Yan, inside the distance, and new. Next at 9,200, we have Garry. He's going to be fighting Darian Weeks as the featured prelim for this card. In his last fight here against Jordan Williams, I actually did pick Garry to win, and he did score a first-round knockout, as you can see here. But the problem with this performance was that he was getting pieced up by Jordan Williams before he found this shot at the end of the first round, and Jordan Williams really isn't UFC caliber in my opinion. So it's a little sus coming into this week at 9,200, to be honest with you. But I do think that a lot of that has to do with debut jitters. It was his first fight with Sanford MMA, so a new gym. And despite how poor he looked defensively, it's hard to argue with the end result. In this game, the end justifies the means. And I think that the UFC is feeding him little Darian Weeks in this spot, and I expect him to pick up another knockout win. Weeks did not look great in his UFC debut against Bryan Barberena, which, to be fair, is not an easy fight for anyone unranked in this weight class, but he didn't really show me enough to give me confidence in playing him as an underdog this week. I do like that Weeks is looking for takedowns, but I think that Garry will be able to defend and keep this at striking range where he should dominate. So this begs the question. Is Garry the future, or is he great value Conor McGregor? Not sure, but I think we'll get closer to that answer this week. The pick for me for this fight is Garry, inside the distance. Next at 9,000, we have Julio Arce. He's going to be welcoming Daniel Santos to the UFC this week. And Arce is a vet. He's been in the UFC for a few years now, and he has some solid wins, like knockouts over Julian Erosa and Andre Ewell, plus a decision win over Dan Ige, which has aged very, very well. And Arce is a smart striker, and he does have killer instinct, but he tends to get into firefights, and sometimes it doesn't always go his way, just like when he was finished late last year by Song Yadong. What was that, a 2nd round knockout? Yes, Song Yadong knocked him out in the 2nd round. And the thing about Daniel Santos is he's not afraid to let his hands go, and I actually think this is the first underdog that I like for this week. For DraftKings, I think Santos is a really good play just because of the finishing upside, and I do expect him to have better output than Arce, who really doesn't throw as many strikes as you would like. So even if he doesn't get the finish in this spot, but keeps high activity and gets the win over Arce down at his price point, he's going to be more than viable. So the pick for me for this fight is Daniel Santos by decision. And next at 8,900, Raquel Pennington. She's going to be fighting Aspen Ladd this week. She's actually stepping in on short notice. And there's no way that I play Raquel Pennington at this price. There's absolutely no way. The over in this this fight, whatever the line is, I'll get you the line later in the week. That is the safest bet of the card in my opinion. I expect Pennington to grind out a decision win over Ladd in this spot. Pennington is very tough, experienced, and she has good clinch control against the fence. And I could see a whole lot of that happening in this fight from both sides. And for Aspen Ladd, she got off to a hot start in the UFC with a couple of knockouts and a decision win over Sijara Eubanks. But since then, she's been skidding. She got one tapped by Germaine Durandamy. She had a nice comeback win over Yana Kunitskaya, but she was losing convincingly before scoring that knockdown in the third round. And in her last fight against Norma Dumont, she looked flatter than marble countertop, so it's hard for me to back her with any confidence. She's really going to have to show us something this week for us to want to back her in the future. So the pick for me for this fight is Rocky Pennington by decision. Next at 8,800, we have another UFC newcomer. We've got Mike Malott. He's making his UFC debut against Mickey Gall this week. I'm surprised that he's the favorite in this matchup. I'm not surprised that much because it's Mickey Gall, but still. Gall has fought the much better competition. He's fought in front of big UFC crowds several times on fight cards with John Jones, another with GSP. So these big moments aren't really going to get to him. He's used to fighting in front of a UFC crowd. He's used to fighting on the biggest stage. And as you know, he's a solid grappler. Most of his wins, almost all of his wins, are by way of rear naked choke. So I don't know if he's a solid grappler or he's a one-trick pony or a little bit of both. Mike Malott, on the other hand, he's making his UFC debut and most of his wins are by way of submission, but he's not going to be able to submit Mickey Gall. I don't think that's happening. And another thing that worries me about Malott is that he hasn't been very active. He fought once in 2021, once in 2020. There's a big gap all the way to 2017, and then before that, the last time that he won a fight before that was back in the beginning of 2014 or early 2014. So he really hasn't been that active. And he's also never won or lost by way of decision. So you wonder where his gas tank is at. So many question marks on the new guy this week. So I'm going to have to take the UFC veteran in Mickey Gall, and I expect him to win this fight. I expect him to get the submission probably in the second or third round. So the pick for me for this fight is Mickey Gall by submission. Next at 8,700, Anthony Hernandez. He's had several opponents for this week with all the cancellations, the replacements, but finally, he knows who he's fighting, and it's UFC newcomer Josh Fremd. Now, Fluffy Hernandez has had a really strange career in the UFC. He loses his debut to Marcus Perez, which is a terrible look. It's a terrible look because Marcus Perez is ass. He then finishes a very solid Jun Young Park, gets folded like laundry by a knee to the body from Kevin Holland, and then he pulls off a huge upset against Rodolfo Vieira by submitting him in the second round. And now that submission win over Rodolfo Vieira looks a lot better on paper than if you actually watched the fight. Vieira gassed out harder than anyone has ever gassed out, and frankly, he looked like he just wanted to go home. So while the win is great on his resume, I'm not all impressed by that. Or like GSP, I'm not impressed by your performance. But for DraftKings, what you really like about this matchup is that Hernandez is either going to get a finish or he's going to get finished himself. So for DraftKings, you want to target this fight. On the other side, we have Josh Fremd, who's all action and he's making his debut in the UFC, but he was going to be somebody who was in the UFC anyway. It's just a matter of time. And outside the UFC, Josh Fremd has actually competed against some solid competition in LFA. He's even shared the cage with Gregory Rodriguez. So I don't really look at this fight as a big step up in competition for him, which is normally the case for UFC debutantes. I actually think that Fremd is going to have the much better striking in this spot, and I could see him finishing this fight in the first or second round. And money is coming in on Hernandez, which means that the price for Fremd is only getting better, so make sure you look out for that money line later in the week. We'll talk about that on the final picks for sure. But the pick for me for this fight is Josh Fremd by knockout. Next at 8,600, we have Jairzinho Rozenstruik. He's going to be fighting Marcin Tybura this week. From a DraftKings perspective, we love the knockout upside from Biggie Boy. Derek Lewis, Francis Ngannou, they're kind of in a league of their own when it comes to punching power, but Jairzinho Rozenstruik is right below them. And if you don't agree, check out the lip service he gave Alistair Overeem. Pause. His only losses are to the three best fighters in the division in Francis Ngannou. You've got Curtis Blades, Cyril Gane. The rest of his fights are knockout wins. My concern with him, my only concern with him really, is that he's extremely one-dimensional. Look here, first of all, you see no takedowns, which, okay, if you're somebody who's a striker, that's kind of expected. These strikers aren't going to be shooting for takedowns, we get that. But at the same time, when you look at control time, this is just a dominant position in the clinch. This is pushing somebody up against the fence. Maybe you're getting pushed up against the fence and you reverse position for a moment. If you look at his control time, there's virtually none. So this tells us that he's not looking to grapple at all, which is tough because on the other side, Tybura is a grinder. He's going to control the pace of the fight, rack up control time, get in the clinch against the fence, and look for his own takedowns because he's definitely not going to be looking to stand across from Jairzinho Rozenstruik for all that long. So whoever wins this fight is going to post a very good score on Draftkings. I'm confident in that. And I'm actually going to go with the power and the kickboxing advantage on the side of Rozenstruik. This seems like the kind of fight that he wins. And we've seen Marcin Tybura chin-checked in the past. So we might see more of that this weekend. The pick for me is Jairzinho Biggie Boy Rozenstruik by knockout. Next at 8,400, we have Vinc Pichel. He's going to be fighting Marco Madsen this week. Vinc Pichel is the favorite here. And if you look on Tapology, 70% roughly are picking him to win, and I really don't understand it at all. Vinc Pichel is a generalist. He's solid at most things, but he's not great at anything. He's fighting a specialist in Marco Madsen. And there's a lot to like about the Olympian this week. Coming out of Fight Ready MMA, one of the hottest camps in the game. He's also a fantastic wrestler, obviously Olympic caliber. And Vinc Pichel has a 25% takedown defense. 25%! And at 39 and some change, one doesn't suddenly become better at wrestling. So even if he's drilling this in this camp, I still think that Marco Madsen is going to put on a clinic and secure several takedowns and also give us a nice high ceiling to work with when it comes to Draftkings scoring. When you look at a common opponent with both of these guys, you can look at Austin Hubbard. Vinc Pichel has a win over Austin Hubbard, but he also went 0 for 4 on takedowns and was taken down 4 times himself. When Marco Madsen fought Austin Hubbard, he went 8 for 12 on takedowns and had over 8 minutes of control time. So I expect him to roll Vinc Pichel this week, and I know the biggest knock on Madsen is his cardio, but until that loses him a fight because he is undefeated, I'm really not going to worry about it. I think that he is a much better grappler than Pichel, and I think we're going to see a unanimous decision win for the Olympian. So the pick for me for this fight is Marco Madsen by decision. And I want to pause real quick and say, comment something for the algorithm. You guys know how the algorithm works. Like the video, comment, subscribe, of course. We're trying to get to 500 so we can open up the community tab and start having fun that way. So please like, comment, sub. Next at 8,300, we have another UFC debutante in Piera Rodriguez. She's making her UFC debut against Kay Hansen this week, and I'll say this now, Kay Hansen is a bum. I know that's not breaking news considering that her record is 7-5 and she's 1-2 in the UFC, but she's really not good. Rodriguez is going to be the much better striker, and I expect her to stuff the weak takedown attempts coming from Hansen. At -120, she's incredible value from a straight betting perspective, and I suggest you take that now before that climbs during the week. You'll just have the better price on it now. And this is probably the last that we see of Kay Hansen unless you want to go behind the paywall, you know? So the pick for me for this fight is Piera Rodriguez by decision. Next at 8,200, we have Mackenzie Dern. She's fighting the tiny tornado Tecia Torres this week. Now, I know a lot of people hate on Mackenzie Dern for whatever reason, but she's very good, and she's got great jiu-jitsu. She has 4 submission wins in the UFC, and her only losses have come to Amanda Ribas, which is and Marina Rodriguez, which no shame in that, it happens to a lot of people. But she does have her work cut out for her this week against Tecia Torres. I know Torres is a popular pick this week, and it's for good reason. She's more experienced at the highest level. She's fought the much better competition. You see 4 champions. I'll pull it up here. You see 4 champions here with Wei Li, Jan Jacek, Andrade, Namajunas. And of course she has lost to Marina Rodriguez because it happens to a lot of people. But outside of that, she's been pretty dominant. She fights at a very high pace, she wrestles effectively, and she's smart enough to not fall into traps on the ground, not fall into any kind of submissions like an armbar from guard or something like that. And Torres has never been finished in all of her fights. She's at 18 professional fights, has never been finished. And for Dern to win this fight, she's going to have to come up with a submission probably in the first round, and I just don't see that materializing for her. What's also worth noting is Dern has extremely poor takedown defense. She has 0% takedown defense in the UFC, which is pretty normal for high-level jiu-jitsu players because they're confident in what they can do on the ground, but I think that is going to cause her to lose this fight if Tecia Torres is able to get on top, start raining down some strikes. control time. I think that she's in for a long night, in for a long 15 minutes. So the pick for me for this fight is the Tiny Tornado Tecia Torres by decision. Next at 8,100, we've got Aleksei Oleinik. He's fighting Vanderaa this week, and I'm torn. I am. Some of you might remember I got burned by Vanderaa on UFC 271 against Andrei Arlovski in a fight that he could have won. He didn't really start fighting until the third round, where he won convincingly, and that was less than 2 months ago. So he's probably looking to get back on the horse and get back in the win column here and probably make a little bit of money as well. I think that's something that we as fans don't really think about as often as maybe we should when fighters are taking fights 2 months apart, probably for the dinero, you know what I mean? Because if you lose, you only make half of what you could have made. So I could see why he wants to get back in there. But can Vanderaa and his toddler body beat the ageless boa constrictor? I don't think so. Vanderaa hasn't shown the punching power that you would like to see from a heavyweight who's primarily looking to strike. And if this fight hits the mat at any point, he's going to tap like chicken. And Aleksei Oleinik might be the least scary, least intimidating fighter in the division, and I think that works to his advantage. I think that fighters feel a false sense of confidence standing across from him, and then he finds a way to drag them into his world. I expect him to do that here, and I expect him to pick up the submission win. So the pick for me for this fight is Aleksei Oleinik by submission. And now I'll quickly go down the rest of the list for you and talk about some of the plays below 8,000. First, Vanderaa. Again, I'm not really interested in playing him this week. I had high hopes for him against Andrei Arlovski because of his output, but at the same time, it just wasn't there. He was very gun-shy, and he's just not the kind of guy I want to bet on anymore. Sorry. I really like Tecia Torres this week. I think that she's going to be able to wrestle effectively. I think that she's going to push a strong pace for all 15 minutes. And I think that she gets the decision win, but scores you around 90 to 100 points like we saw in her last 2 outings. Kay Hansen, I'm not interested. Madsen, I think that he's absolutely going to go to work on Vinc Pichel and his 25% takedown defense. We didn't really see him shoot for takedowns against Clay Guida, which was probably by design. Clay Guida is a solid wrestler. He's going to scramble. He's going to tire you out. Madsen doesn't have a great gas tank, but he did come in with a great game plan, not taking Guida down and just picking him apart from the outside. But this week, I do think that you should play him. I do think that he's going to go to work, and I think that he's going to score a lot of points. Probably like 90 to 100 points, like he did in his 2 fights before the Clay Guida fight. I just don't expect him to stand with Vinc Pichel, who may have the striking advantage. So give me Madsen to score a lot of points via takedowns. Give me Madsen by decision. Marcin Tybura, there is value here. I mean, like I said, if he wins this fight, he's scoring you a lot of points. You see here 112, 100, 90. He's going to score a decent amount of points. Even 81, 87 down at this price, it's worth it. It makes sense. So I think that Marcin Tybura is solid value. I do still like Rozenstruik to win just because the power is so equalizing. But my mind could change later in the week. I could end up leaning this way. Marcin Tybura not completely outgunned here. Josh Fremd, I think that he's going to make a statement. I think that a lot of people are going to find out who Josh Fremd is and are going to become fans because I think that he knocks out Fluffy Hernandez inside the first or second round this week. And at this price, you're going to need him in your lineup if he does that. Mickey Gall against the UFC newcomer Mike Malott. I like Mickey Gall this week. I think that Mike Malott is going to have those UFC jitters. I think that he might get tired. I think that he's going to try to grapple with Mickey Gall, and it's just not going to work out for him. So give me Mickey Gall this week. I'm going to side with the experience. I'm going to side with the... Is this the first guy from UFC's or Dana White's looking for a fight? I think it is, right? But anyway, Mickey Gall, good pick this week. Aspen lad, I'm not really interested. She could pull off the win, and at this price, she would be viable, but she's let me down in the past, and I really just don't like how she has to get up to speed to fight. It seems like in her last couple of fights, for the beginning stages of it, she's just not there. Daniel Santos, just like Josh Fremd, I think this is a guy who's making his debut who can really make an impact here, make an impression against somebody like Julio Arce. It's not the hardest matchup in the world, making your UFC debut at this weight class against Arce. Darian Weeks, I think he gets his jaw spun. I think the future knocks him out. Aljamain Sterling, if you wanted to maybe stack these fights, that would make sense. He was having some success. He was throwing a lot of strikes as well, and you expect him to probably come in with a similar game plan this time around. Aljamain Sterling, there's solid value there. I don't think that he wins, but if you wanted to stack that in a cash game, that might work out for you. I'll talk more about that in the final picks video later in the week. But Aljamain Sterling, he might score a decent amount of points just grabbing 1 or 2 takedowns, as well as throwing over 100 strikes. Gilbert Burns, not really interested. I think Boar's going to eat. And then Jung, I think Zombie has a chance here. I think of these 3, I actually like Zombie the most. But at the same time, Alexander Volkanovski is just a nightmare matchup for everybody at 145 pounds. So I still like the champ. I still like him to hold on to his title. But Jung is definitely my favorite of the 3 that are priced down here. And if you've made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. If I sound terrible, you know why, but I appreciate you logging through and getting to the end with me here. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. That way I can bring more of this to you.